Hello and welcome you all to the Elets Agriculture Innovation Summit, one of the premier virtual events on agriculture innovation to discuss on various aspects of the growth of farm sector for future, especially keeping in mind the COVID problem and the post-COVID scenario. In the inaugural, we have a perspective from Israel, from Government of India, Minister of Agriculture, and from Government of Uttar Pradesh on how uh, we can redefine and realign ourselves for the farm sector growth for the post-COVID era. That was more on policy perspective, but this session will have a global perspective along with a touch, Indian touch. We have got eminent experts from various countries who will be discussing on various aspects of farm sector, be it policy, be it technology, be it innovation, and how all can come together to move in the right direction for the growth of agriculture sector. We have eminent speakers with us. We have with us Mr. Lazaro Sandoval, Senior Agriculture Attaché, Foreign Agriculture Service, United States Department of Agriculture, USDA, US Consulate General, Mumbai. We welcome Mr. Lazaro. We
Thank
have
you.
with us, we have with us Mr. Dalci Bagolin, Agriculture Attaché, Embassy of Brazil in New Delhi. We welcome Mr. Dalci.
Thank
We
you.
have with us Mr. Mark Jarman, CGeog, GI, Head of Agriculture, Satellite Applications, Catapult. We welcome you. We welcome you, Mr. Mark, from London. He's joining us too early in London time.
Good morning.
Good morning. And we'll be joined by Mr. John Southwell, Counsellor Agriculture, Australian High Commission to India. He'll be joining us shortly. And we'll also have Dr. Sangita Ladha, Vice President, Marketing and Business Development, Jain Irrigation Systems Limited, India. Yes, Mr. John has joined us from Australian High Commission to India, Council of Agriculture, Mr. John Southwell. We welcome you, Mr. John.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. So we have got, and we welcome Dr. Sangita from Jain Irrigation Systems Limited, India. So we have got speakers from the United States, from Brazil, from Australia, from London, and from India. The name of this session is AgroTech, Innovation in Supply Chain Management, moving forward with global collaborations for the growth of farm sector in post-COVID world. With this, I will also lay out how we are going to go about this session. That initially we have a brief introduction about ourselves. Hello, Dr. Sangita. We welcome you.
Hi.
This is Souvik, Senior Assistant Editor, Elets Technomedia. We welcome you with other fellow panelists from various countries, and we are all in different time zones. Someone has joined from London, some from Australia, so we all in different time zones. So we welcome you all again. So as I was saying that we'll be having a brief introduction about ourselves for 5 minutes as what our organizations are doing, and then we'll move on to the main discussion on various topics for this session. So with this, I'll go to Mr. Lazaro Sandoval, Senior Agricultural Attaché, Foreign Agriculture Service, United States Department of Agriculture, United Consulate in Mumbai. Mr. Lazaro, give a short introduction about your organization.
Sure. My name is Lazaro Sandoval. I'm the Senior Agricultural Attaché for the U.S. Department of Agriculture here at the U.S. Consulate in Mumbai. I specifically represent an agency within the USDA called the Foreign Agricultural Service. And what we essentially do is we link U.S. agriculture to the world by enhancing export opportunities and at the same time ensuring global food security.
Right, Mr. Lazaro. Thank you so much. Can we have a perspective from Mr. Dalci Bagolin, Agriculture Attaché, Embassy of Brazil in New Delhi? Mr. Dalci, if you can shed some light on what Agriculture Division in Embassy of Brazil in New Delhi is doing.
Yes, my name is Dalci Bagolin. I'm the Agriculture Attaché of the Embassy of Brazil. And we are working here to increase the relationship between India and Brazil in agriculture. It involves trade and also involves cooperation, investment. So everything related with agriculture, we are involved with the embassy.
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Dalci. If I may come to Mr. John Southwell, Councillor Agriculture, Australian High Commission to India. Mr. John, if you can shed some light on what kind of work Agriculture Division in Australian High Commission India is doing.
Oh, thank you very much. As mentioned, my name is John Southwell, and I'm a Counsellor of Agriculture to the Australian High Commission to India, although I am coming to you from just outside Canberra in Australia, and you can see the farm shed in my background. I'm actually sitting on a farm right now speaking to you. Our job mainly is to advance Australia's interests within India, but also to work on cooperation between Australia and India on all matters relating to technical market access, as well as cooperation on agricultural management, water, and a number of other aligned areas. And one of our key aims is to actually grow the Australia-India bilateral relationship from an agricultural perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Can I have a short, brief intro on satellite applications Catapult London by Mr. Mark Jarman?
Of course. So Mark Jarman, Head of Agriculture at the Satellite Applications Catapult. We are one of 9 catapults established by the UK government to transform the UK capability for innovation in specific areas and to help drive future economic growth. In my role, I'm very much focused around how we can harness satellite technologies, data connectivity to really enhance agricultural systems around the world. I'm very fortunate in that I get to engage with stakeholders from across value chains in different countries and really see how we can leverage the mutual empowering capability of the catapult to tackle challenges, bringing together information.
Right. Thank you so much. Can we have a perspective or a short bio on Jain Irrigation Systems Limited by Dr. Sangita Ladha, please?
Good morning, Mr. Souvik. I hope I'm audible.
Yeah, you're audible. Yeah.
I'm Dr. Sangita, Vice President Marketing with Jain Irrigation Systems Limited, and Jain Irrigation is one of the largest organizations in the globally or in the space of irrigation and water management. Apart from that, we are also one of the largest player in food processing in mango, orange, spices, also into a largest facility of tissue culture. And apart from that, one of the largest investor in Israel, the only irrigation company which has got the largest facilities in Israel. A very large R&D center in irrigation and water management working in this particular space since last 5 decades and above. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sangita. Now, if we move to the main discussion of this session, how about a question on how do you all think that the role of technology and innovation for supply chain management or irrigation of farm produce or marketing of agro produces will be redefined in post-COVID era? If I may come to Mr. Lazaro to answer this first.
Sure. So first off, thank you again for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here with your firm and also to be here with the esteemed speakers. It's a real pleasure. When I was sort of thinking about this particular innovation summit, which I love the fact that you are covering a range of different topics, one of the things that definitely came to mind was sort of the effect of COVID-19 and how, as damaging as it has been and disruptive as it has been, it also presents us with some really interesting opportunities for innovation. So, for example, at least coming from the U.S. perspective, and I think the lessons from the United States also apply to the rest of the world, the impact of COVID-19 on our agricultural sector has been the following. There's been significant supply chain disruptions, as we've seen all over the world. It's also led to regulatory disruptions in terms of how governments have to respond to these type of situations. Also operational shifts in the way that farmers, agribusiness industries, etc., respond to and try to operate in a COVID-19 situation. And then not only that, but on the consumer drive, how there's a real change in terms of consumer preferences and habits. So as disruptive as these things might be, this actually leads to some very significant opportunities for innovation. When you talk about sort of what's being done from the government side in the United States, we're starting to see a lot more digitization of processes. So electronic certificates, permits, those types of things, although there was already sort of a current of digitization of processes, This now has been fully accelerated due to the COVID-19 situation. Along with that, you have increased research, specifically in areas like rapid response, health, and economic security as well. And I think one area that we should also keep in mind, and this is something that was alluded to during the first part of this summit, was it's also leading to a significant amount of what you would say policy innovation and the way governments are responding to this, whether it's export promotion to diversify, because the diversification of markets helps increase rural incomes, rural infrastructure projects, so everything from rural broadband to ensure that people can have access to telemedicine or to school, community centers, community kitchens, etc. Alternative food distribution systems, so that's farmers and food banks working closer together to ensure that the populace has an adequate food supply. Also nutrition programs, how do we make sure that those less fortunate still have access to a stable food supply? Those are just some of the things that, some of the ways that governments are responding. One that I, for example, wanted to particularly highlight that we're currently engaging on in the United States is, for example, we have already introduced legislation to help the agriculture sector in response to COVID-19. Specifically, we introduced a program called the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program, which is providing payments to deliver relief to America's farmers and ranchers impacted by the coronavirus pandemic. And what USDA is doing now, which is quite interesting, is we're partnering with regional and local distributors so that they can purchase their produce, their dairy and meat supplies. And then what USDA will then handle is delivering those type of food items to food banks, community food banks, faith-based organizations, and other nonprofits. For example, in the case of India, we all saw how, unfortunately, many horticulture farmers here, farmers of fresh fruits and vegetables, were severely hit by the pandemic and how it led to, and it's the resulting supply chain shocks that it led to. So what we've done in the United States is actually, through this program, the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program, we're providing financial assistance to producers of these commodities who have suffered a 5% or greater change in price. So if these farmers can demonstrate this change in price to the government, they will then get some relief. But I think sort of another interesting area in terms of the way the U.S. agricultural system has responded has been specifically how the industry and farmers have responded. I've been especially impressed by the emergence of, for example, electronic markets and exchanges. So now, for years, we've been talking about sort of things like blockchain to decentralize markets. These things are now being further accelerated. Are using apps and other forms of information technology to, I guess you could say, cut the middleman and expedite the distribution of food products. On the farm, now that farmers can't necessarily have, let's say, an agronomist come in and assist them with farming, they're now working on more digital monitoring of their farm operations and getting guidance on how to continue their farm operations via Skype, via other sort of information technology tools. Not only that, I think one of the things that has been particularly interesting by COVID-19 is larger firms and even mid or small-sized ones can no longer rely on traditional R&D when it comes to solving solutions. I think now what it's going to take is crowdsourcing a lot of solutions in order to be able to quickly address some of the issues that have been caused by the COVID-19. So that's been a very positive development. And as I mentioned before, distribution alternatives that have developed that have emerged due to COVID-19 in the United States have been quite interesting. So there's much greater use of e-commerce and also direct sourcing and delivery through apps. So that's been another positive development. And just to kind of close off my comments, the situation obviously has the COVID-19 situation has the potential to permanently shift our agricultural industries and supply chains. And now more than ever, coordination between the public and private sectors is essential to ensure an adequate food supply and the global agricultural sector's growth. And there's a saying in the United States, and that is, and in a large part of the world, and that is, necessity is the mother of invention. And I recently came across a very interesting note from the Farm Press, and it was, if necessity is the mother of invention, a global pandemic should be the father of an innovation boom. So as difficult as this situation is, I hope that we all take to heart how the necessities that have emerged through the situation lead to innovation boom. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. I think quite insightful perspective presented by Lazaro, that lot of scope are there. Actually, as you have said, that necessity is the mother of invention, but this global pandemic can be the father of innovation, and not only for farm sector but overall economic growth. That we are all redefining ourselves every day, and we are all uh, trying to move forward with the set of new nomenclature for any kind of movement for any sector, and especially farm sector, because so many people are engaged with that, and so many livelihood are associated with that. We had a perspective from United States. Let's go to Australia, to Canberra. John, if we can have a perspective from John about what can be the role of innovation and technology for the agriculture farm sector in future, especially in the post-COVID era.
Thank you, Souvik, and I absolutely can associate myself with everything that Lazaro just said around both the opportunities, but also a lot of the risks associated with COVID-19 and the current situation that the globe finds itself in. What I would say is that, there's that age-old thing saying of don't waste the crisis. And I'd say at the moment, what I've seen in terms of the Indian government moving towards some reforms which have been announced a couple of weeks ago, we very much look forward to seeing the results of those reforms being implemented, because we do believe that there is an opportunity there to actually increase farmer income. In terms of agricultural innovation, there is a real opportunity to take up various ways of doing business, and maybe if I give a plug to my own innovation system our own innovation system in Australia, in that we have a series of research and development corporations in Australia that deal with grains, with horticulture, with sugar, with cotton, and also meat and livestock. And they're actually now industry owned and industry driven. And each industry has an opportunity to actually put in levies based on different sales, which then enables them to, those funds are then matched by the Australian government up to a point for research and development. And that actually puts industry in the driver's seat for the actual decisions on what research should be undertaken to actually for the benefit of that industry. And it's something where if you have government basically getting out of the way of industry, while also noting that that in Australia it is a nation of 25 million people, we have 300,000 farmers. In India, you have a nation of 1.3 billion. And you have 30 crore farmers. So I do appreciate that the scales are very different, but there is the opportunity to actually really build on innovation through and encourage private investment, as well as encourage the work that's been done in the various policy announcements by the Modi government. And we would be very, very interested in seeing those being legislated to then hopefully assist with the various changes in the supply chain, hopefully mitigate some of the supply chain disruptions by encouraging greater private investment in agriculture, but also noting that there has been a great opportunity for governments across the world in relation to certification, greater will towards digitisation, and the opportunity to actually, undertake things such as what I'm doing right now, which is a meeting where I'm sitting on a farm in rural New South Wales, speaking to a number of people in India and across the world. So there is a good opportunity here, and even say, for example, through the use of WhatsApp and various technologies, I would say that despite the current fog associated with across the world, possibly the world has actually never been more connected. We should harness that.
Yeah, wonderful. I think what John has tried to emphasize that world is connected, and we are feeling that more than ever because even we are all sitting at home, lockdown the lockdown, and even we are not going to do much of activity, but we're still connected. As you have rightly said, you're sitting in Canberra, I'm sitting in Delhi, someone sitting in London, and someone sitting in other part of the world, and we are talking and connected, and we're talking about innovation and technology for agricultural growth. I think, yes, you rightly said that world is connected, and I think that is the move forward. I think what you have rightly said that, John, that all the governments now should come together to build up a comprehensive economic policy, keeping in mind the agriculture sector. I think Dalci Bagolin from Embassy of Brazil can shed some light on that, on how technology and innovation can be leveraged more and more for the growth of agriculture sector, keeping in mind the menace of COVID and post-COVID scenario.
Okay. To help to respond to your question, I would like to share a small presentation with the overview about innovation in Brazil. Let me share my screen.
And in the meantime, when Dalci is preparing a presentation, I can inform our August audience who are watching us throughout the world and India that we are doing this entire virtual summit being broadcasted live in Facebook through eGov magazine handed, and also being broadcasted on YouTube. We are also tweeting real time. Our hashtag is #IlletsAgri, and you are all welcome to join us more and more for the rest of the sessions as well. And you can ask your questions, and we'll try to give reply to them by our eminent expert speakers. And we'll be also be documenting this entire happening of this virtual event, and we'll be circulating that documentation, the event report, with all the stakeholders of agriculture sector, both in India and abroad. Yes, Dalci, over to you.
Okay. Over the past few decades, Brazil has gone from a net importer of food to an agriculture powerhouse. So nowadays, Brazil is one of the big producer and exporter of several crops with a good market share. And because that, Brazil is very concerned with the impacts of COVID-19 in the food chain. So Brazil have taken several measures to guarantee the supply of food both to internal market and also for the imported countries. So the Ministry of Agriculture, working in supporting farmers, in logistics of transport, in establishing new protocols for the agri industry, and working to guarantee the fulfillment of the export contracts without interruption. So, despite all COVID crisis, Brazil remains a reliable food supplier worldwide. Some countries have banned the exports of food for other countries. In Brazil, in contrary, Brazil increased the exports in this moment that several countries are worried about the scarcity of food. And it's impossible to talk about innovation in Brazil without talking about sustainability. And also another pillar of the Brazilian agriculture is the entrepreneurship of the farmers and the startups, for example. So the sustainability, one of the important points that is related with sustainability is the use of land. And I would like to share with all of you these numbers that Brazil preserves the original vegetation in the country. 66% of the all land in the country is maintain the original vegetation, and just 78% of the land is used for agriculture, and around 20% is used for livestock, for grass pasture. We can see here the one overview of the land preserved in Brazil. All green areas are preserved with original vegetation, and also this preservation occurred in the same time that Brazil, as I said, came from an important food country to an exporter. So it was helping with the increase in the productivity. In the last 50 years, we have increased the the production more than 5 times, and the land increased just 30%. So we could increase the production without deforesting some new areas. And it will not be impossible will not be possible without the innovation and research in agriculture. And we have one of the most important uh, infrastructure. The Embrapa is the Brazilian Agricultural Research Corporation that have developed a very important role in the last 50 years in helping Brazil increase the productivity based in science, based in technology and innovation. I would like to highlight some of these technologies that help Brazil increase the productivity and same time make the agriculture more sustainable. So one is the minimum no-tillage system that help to help in conservation of the soil. Another is the biological fixation of the nitrogen. Also the recovery of degraded pastures, and the double crop system. Without irrigation, we can have 2 crops in the same area in 1 year. This week, Brazil launched one very important program related with innovation in agriculture, is that the Bioagro Inputs Program. It's a program to support and promote the research in biological control. Brazil is incentivizing the research in this area of use of bioinputs in agriculture, and it will make the Brazilian agriculture even more sustainable and less dependent of chemical inputs. One area that Brazil has developed very well in the last few years, is the innovation environment. So we have a lot of startups growing up in Brazil. We have in this scenario of startups one high involvement of the farmers. The farmers participate in hackathons, showing their problems to the developers, to the programmers, and even participating as investors in these startups. We have also a good net of institutions working in innovation and agriculture, all then connect and support the new startups. And the last 2 years, the Embrapa, our public research agriculture company, realized one census to identify which startups are working in agriculture in Brazil. It was made by Embrapa and 2 other Brazilian institutes. So they classified the startups that are working before the farm, inside the farm, and after farm, and identify a big number of startups working in this area. They are classified in different categories with a total of 1,125 startups. So I would like to highlight that this number increased 3 times, one from 2018 to 2019. So it's demonstrate how this environment of innovation in startups is developing in Brazil. And because that, India also is a country that has been innovating in this area with a good environment for innovation. So Brazil, the Embassy of Brazil started in 2018 on program about Brazilian India AgroTech Mission. So in 2018, 4 startups come to India, participate in the AgroTech Bangalore Fair. We have also one delegation of farmers of Brazil that come to India to see how is the system and environment for developing new technologies and innovation in agriculture. And last year, 2019, we started a very fruitful partnership with the ICAR, especially with Pulsa Krishi, to start a cross incubation program. So 5 startups, Brazilian startups, came to India last year for a 2 weeks incubation program in Delhi, in Hyderabad. It was a very good event with very good results, and it was programmed for April this year. 5 Indian startups going to Brazil. Unfortunately, because the coronavirus crisis, it was not possible, but it was postponed for future date. But all of this demonstrate the potential of innovation and make the agriculture more sustainable and more profitable. And all of these are related also with the challenges that we are facing today with the coronavirus crisis. And for Brazil to become, to maintain as one of the important producer for your own people and for the world and sustain the food chain, the innovation is fundamental, and we believe that we need to continue to improve in this area, and the cooperation between India and Brazil is in this area. Two big countries, two countries with high, powerful agriculture and with the well-developed innovation system. So it's very important to continue the cooperation in this area.
Thank you, Dalci. I think if we can take the crux of this presentation and what kind of innovation and various steps taken by Brazilian government, and also between Brazil and India collaboration in the farm sector, we can say that the new mantra, the new age mantra of, or the new world order of agricultural sector will be innovation-led sustainable agriculture model. And I think that will help us, all the governments, be it Brazil, be it UK, be it US, be it Australia, with other countries, that and more global collaboration have to take place. As I was seeing the slide which was mentioned by Dalci, that is saying that there are more than 1,100 startups are there in Brazil, agro startups. I was going to Startup India website. I think I saw around more than 3,000 startups, agro startups are there registered in Startup India website. I think in US there must be more startups, agro startups. In London there must be more agro startups. In Australia there must be more startups. And if we can leverage the entire power and force of all these startups together, and that can only happen if we can have more and more dialogue between governments, between communities, and between stakeholders in this kind of platform. And that has been the aim for Elets Technomedia, to create this platform, the virtual platform where best of the minds, best of the experts can come together and share their experience, so the knowledge sharing happens. And from that knowledge sharing, we can get an idea which can be taken forward for the future generation of agriculture farm sector. With this, I'll come to Mark Jarman. Mark, I know it's early morning for you in London, but what is your take on the role of technology and innovation, or how we should redefine our role of technology and innovation for the growth of farm sector in future?
I think you make some interesting points there about the the entrepreneurs, the startups, the ecosystems that are growing. I think what COVID has done is it's certainly shown a light on the food sector and the importance of it, and really showcased how complex, interdependent, and global and local it is, how it's evolving, and ultimately how it's been fundamentally quite successful in being responsive to knocks and challenges. And I'm very fortunate in that I work for an organization that is neutral in its ethos and setup, and it allows us to engage with the technology businesses, the innovators, but also policymakers and the supply chain. And I sit in the UK Food and Drink Sector Council's innovation working group that's very much looking at how can we harness innovation and technology appropriately to address the needs of the sector, both now within a COVID environment, but beyond that. And I think we have to recognise that COVID has probably shone a light on some of the challenges, but fundamentally most of them existed before COVID and needed addressing anyhow. And what we've seen in the UK, for example, is that supply chains have been fairly resilient, but that there has been particular failures, and that's been driven by probably a consumer habit that wasn't quite expected to manifest itself. To give you an example, we've struggled really in the UK to get hold of eggs just from that supply chain breaking down. This week I was on a call with the Colombian government and looking at changing needs in relation to production of cacao and avocado, and we were seeing a changing dynamic brought about by COVID related to export and ensuring that produce was fit for purpose for the import markets from the US and Europe, and that was really driving them to look at new methodologies and processes around digital transformation, traceability, and ensuring kind of transparency. And what we've seen in kind of a dialogue in the UK, that there's certainly a better need for oversight of the system, and that system to enable multi-stakeholders to better understand and manage the overall system and their specific part in that, and that needs to be thought about at a variety of different scales. I think we've seen from COVID a move towards more kind of local and self-sufficiency, particularly in countries that are on net importers, but also an increasing awareness about the role of waste and our need to better manage supply and demand. You see in the UK the amount of milk that has been wasted just because people cannot go and get their morning coffee from the variety of coffee chains that exist here. Why can't they do that? It's because we can't change the fundamentals of contracts that exist underneath that. And if we think about it, there's massive opportunities that COVID has also highlighted because of some of the failures. If you take the small matter of Brexit here in the UK and the changing terms of labour, we are facing here a massive shortage in terms of labour for harvest this year. And the UK government has put out a massive push to basically call on the population to go and ensure that we can harvest that. What has it done from a technology and innovation push? Well, it's focused our need to link into automation and robotics and really push through some of the innovation there. What are we seeing from a retail perspective? Well, we're seeing consumer habits change, and therefore a push for local, more nutritious food. And that is influencing some of the innovation we're seeing around genetics, around safety of produce. If you saw this week, there was an investment in the US of $250 million in a business that's looking at a special coating on fresh produce to extend shelf life, ensure that we have produce available. And also we've got a strong focus on digitization and the use of AI and analytics. And when I engage with the community, and we've been talking to a colleague, Anam Rahman, who's been developing an initiative called the COVID-19 food supply, where he's looked at it and gone, it's a global challenge, and we need to bring together data scientists, a community, operations researchers, applied mathematicians to try and address this fundamental challenge. We as a Catapult, we are working with our colleagues at another Catapult, the digital Catapult, to address the UK food supply chain with a concept called Feed UK, where we can very much work with the food sector and make sure that we're conceiving an activity that's driven by the food sector, led by the system, and built with the system to deliver benefits for the system. And that's important because you recognise in the innovation side of production, whether it's here in the UK, India, South America, Southeast Asia, we all have very similar challenges. We all have access to a lot of data. We are connected, but fundamentally, are we actually, leveraging that technology appropriately? And I very much agreed with the comment of one of our earlier speakers in the session this morning that innovation is a tool. And if we can harness that appropriately with the needs of the user at the heart of it and understand the dynamics, the systems that are in place, and actually showcase and create value propositions across that with new business models, then we have an opportunity to really deliver some change. I think what COVID has highlighted is that the world can come together. There is a global, willingness to tackle a crisis. We have a fundamental crisis that exists beyond COVID in terms of the impacts of climate change. And what will be interesting to see is can we take the same responsiveness to mitigate climate change, deliver resilience, and ensure technology and innovation is within that moving forwards.
Quite interesting and insightful discussion. I'll just take a cue from what Mark has said, that there's also there's a case and scenario. We'll come to Dr. Sangita Ladha right after this. But the interesting phenomenon is happening in India. We know about migration, right? That the next generation farmers are leaving villages and coming to urban areas, and we're talking about more and more urbanization, right? But this phenomena, COVID thing, has help us to see that it's now the reverse migration is happening. So maybe that's an opportunity, that because more and people are going back to their villages, maybe they'll be engaged with farming sector again. And I think that's also a huge opportunity when it comes to skilling and upskilling all the existing farmers and new breed of farmers also with the new technology, so that they can understand and realize the importance of using technology and leveraging innovation, so that they can get more produce. Those can be marketed in a better way, and they get the right price. I think in that perspective, vis-a-vis importance of technology and innovation, if Dr. Sangita Ladha can shed some perspective on that. The Indian
thank you,
perspective.
Mr. Souvik. Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mr. Souvik. I hope I'm audible.
Yeah, you're audible. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, India has seen a good amount of volatility, uncertainty, migrations, and instability, which you mentioned. In case of agriculture, what we foresee the glaring challenge is a labor shortage, apart from supply chain disruptions, liquidity crunch, and economic visibility of operations, of farming operations. But every crisis comes up with an opportunity, and COVID crisis is something which enables us to scale up technological interventions and take up resource use efficiency, which was today corroborated in the morning by Dr. Dalci also. That smart farming is something which we as an organization we have been talking for last a decade and above, but which has not really happened the way we wanted it to be. And I think this crisis has given us an opportunity to promote mechanization, automation, and a decision support system in agriculture. Today, with this advent of smartphones and internet connectivity all across the country, it is possible for a grower to control farm operations in real time from a remote location, and that too precisely with limited resources. So adoption of technologies which were once dubbed as futuristic and too sophisticated are imperative now. And I believe that this crisis is actually going to focus on this. I want to reflect on two parts. One is on the irrigation, and second is on the supply chain part. Post-COVID, there is a high consciousness on immunity, hygiene, sanitation, clean production of food, traceability, a sort of contactless packaging, distribution, and all. Now, all this calls for transformation of the traditional or existing food supply chain to value chain, which means implementation of good agricultural practices, phytosanitary standards on the ground, and as such, a processor, a food processor, shall have to be involved in all aspects of production, right from sowing to harvesting and capacity building, hand-holding of the farmers, and being involved in all package of practices on the ground till the material is processed. I'm proud to say that we are one of the organizations who are into largest processing of mango, onion, banana puree, spices, strawberry, orange, jackfruit, and all. And all these activities we have been doing for almost 10 to 15 years. But it is now time that all these activities needs to be scaled up with cluster farming and linking of all these clusters and the farmer producer organization to processors, and the relationship between the processor and the farmer not just remaining that of a buyer and a purchaser, but much more beyond that. And as you rightly mentioned, capacity building. This was on the food supply part. But before that, I would also like to reflect on what is the scenario on the water part, on the irrigation part. Because 5 years down the line, between 2025 to 2050, India is arriving at a situation wherein the water demand shall surpass availability, and the country is staring at a water apocalypse. Our per capita water availability has already dropped below the 1700 cubic meter, which is a cutoff limit. and we are approaching to a scenario from a high water stressed country to a water scarce level. And water and agriculture are intricately linked. In fact, water is directly linked with productivity of agriculture. Water crisis significantly impacts not just agriculture productivity, but overall economic prosperity, and is an escalating challenge for business. On the other hand,
your moderation in the third session.
uh, on the other hand, India is also having a good amount of monsoon. In the morning, we must have heard in the inaugural speech by Dan that Israel has only between 100 to 500 mm of rains, whereas India has almost 1000 mm of rains, and 72% of geographical area of the country receives precipitation above 750 mm. And then the question is, why are we so water stressed and glaring at a water catastrophe when a country like Israel can manage with hardly 100 mm rains? So the reason is that India is not water stressed on account of quantum of water available, but the management of water. And this demands a remarkable transformation and a tectonic shift in our approach from productivity, talking not just about kilograms per hectare or yield per hectare, to water productivity. That is kilogram per cubic meter of water used, and which is a resource use efficiency. And I believe with the labor crunch and with the economical feasibility looming large on the agriculture sector, farming is unthinkable without adoption of technology, and especially with micro irrigation technology, because it is an innovation which has there for last 30-40 years. It has been proven that micro irrigation leads to irrigating twice the area with available water, at the same time increasing the yields, reduction in pesticides, fertilizers. So achieving food security with increasing yields, achieving water security with saving in waters. Apart from that, saving in energy. So energy security. So food security, water security, and energy security, and also India's target of doubling farmers' income is achievable with this particular technology. And Mr. Souvik, you would be surprised to know, also the panel, that though we have 70 million hectares in the country which is irrigated, till date, hardly 15 to 20% of the area is under micro irrigation. So still in India, we say technological technological interventions in terms of automation, remote sensing, everything is there in place. IoT is there, blockchain is there, but the basic for the precision farming, for the adoption of precision farming, is micro irrigation, which we need to have it in every farm. And major disruption in this sector is micro irrigation has also is now being used for field crops like rice and wheat. Once upon a time, this technology was used only for horticulture. But now today, rice, wheat. Apart from that, water guzzler crops like sugarcane and cotton, we have been using it, and the results are astounding, because 50 to 60% increase in yields, you consuming 50% less water and less pumping and less energy. So post-COVID, it is a shift to systems which are economically viable, technically feasible, environmentally sustainable, and socially adaptable, and getting a larger area coverage with a mantra of more crop per drop and greater resource use efficiency or water use efficiency. I think I'll come back on this other points later on. This is what I would conclude for the irrigation and supply chain at this moment.
A very interesting thought, Dr. Sangita, and as you rightly said, that it's not about the only water scarcity in India, but about the water management. And as you rightly pointed out, our focus should be more and more in micro irrigation, and we have to use technology. There's no other option. And I think this crisis will actually help us to come up with new measures, new policies also, to think about the irrigation sector and supply chain management, especially in reference to agriculture sector. I think we have come to the last leg of this wonderful, insightful panel discussion. Maybe we can end with a short ending note from all of you. Let me go to Canberra again. John, what will be, if I ask you in 2 sentences or 3 sentences, that what is your opinion that how global communities can come together more and more for the growth of farm sector? We have discussed about technology, policy in terms of policy. if we can focus that, if we think that what kind of new policies should be there, and how all government should work together to build up a comprehensive agricultural growth policy, keeping in mind the post-COVID era. Maybe 5 minutes each from all of us. John, to start with you.
Okay. Thank you, Subjit. And I'd probably say that 5 minutes is not nearly enough that I'd be able to cover all of that. But maybe if I could just maybe point out 2 or 3 things. Number one is that innovation isn't just about using technology. It's also about undertaking things in a different way. So innovative practices or different ways of doing things. So technology doesn't necessarily have to be the driver. It's actually sometimes the technology is the enabler, but it's actually a different way of thinking. 2 other things that I'd point out is that number one is that we need to be very, very, very careful about just simply picking up a model which has been in one place and just putting it straight down in another, and making sure that it's very much aligned to the local conditions. Australia and India, for example, share very similar climatic conditions and water scarcity problems. And we're also both federations. We both have constitutional difficulties with state and federal responsibilities for agriculture and water as well. And I think that's something where, again, if I turn back to the point of innovation, not just being about information technology and communication services, it's also about being innovative in how you apply regulation and also constitutional and policy responsibilities. Finally, the other point that I'd probably make is that encouraging private industry to engage with each other from Australia to the United Kingdom to India to Brazil and the United States and other places as well, and making sure that we do that consistent with the rules-based order, because those international rules-based orders have been built up over decades. And while the COVID-19 crisis, world crisis, gives us the opportunity to be innovative with those, you don't want to throw the proverbial baby out with the bathwater. And those rules that have been brought up over time, we do need to make sure that we are consistent with those, and also amend them where appropriate. Because otherwise, all of our international work over the last 50 or 60 years, especially, will have been to naught.
Very interesting, John Southwell, Counsellor Agriculture, Australian High Commission to India. I'll request John to stay back for 5 minutes more. I'll come to Mr. Lazaro Sandoval, Senior Agriculture Attaché, Foreign Agriculture Service, United States Department of Agriculture, United States Consulate, Jain in Mumbai. Lazaro, your departing note for the discussion. How do you see that how global communities or global governments can come together, redefining or coming up with new policies for the agriculture sector?
Sure. So as sort of John mentioned, our governments, through various international fora and SORA and so on, have already had these discussions on sort of how to coordinate agricultural production and policy throughout the world in a responsible fashion. So I think that dialogue should continue, and should continue in a responsible way, especially in the face of this crisis. One of the things that I've noticed my own career as an agricultural attaché, and one of the things I noticed in my previous post was farmer-to-farmer interaction is actually very, very useful in terms of ensuring that we have greater collaboration between the farm sectors around the world. So of course, governments will always collaborate. We will always have our embassies, our consulates, in order to share best practices. But I think farmers being able to do that is quite helpful. I'll give you a quick example. I once helped a group of Argentine farmers go to the United States and visit with farmers in the United States. And it was absolutely brilliant to see how they were sharing best practices, kind of seeing what things work and what things don't work for each other based upon their unique agricultural systems. And I think that's absolutely key. It's perhaps we as governments helping that sort of interaction between the private sectors in different countries. I think that's where those sparks will occur, and that innovation will occur. And I also would encourage that from the government side, let's not only focus on national governments, but let's also try to encourage, I believe it, the governments at the local, state, and national levels should also do what they can to inspire innovation from the public and private sector. I've had the chance now in my year here in India to visit a lot of rural areas in various states, and it's been absolutely amazing to see the diversity of approaches from the different states when it comes to agricultural innovation. And so I think that's another key thing. We can no longer wait for national governments to encourage innovation, but we also have to rely upon our local and state governments to encourage that as well, in addition to the private sector. And so I think really that's really it in terms of the things that we can do. The USDA's innovation agenda, for example, what we're hoping to do is to essentially stimulate innovation so that American agriculture can achieve the shared goal of increasing U.S. agricultural production by 40% while cutting our environmental footprint by half by 2050. This is quite an important goal, but we understand that innovation, and a challenging goal, but we understand that innovation will be a key for it. So what I would suggest is, again, let's keep those dialogues going, and let's keep them going in a responsible fashion. But let's also see what we can do to encourage greater farmer-to-farmer, industry-to-industry interaction. Because I think all of us around the world have some very interesting practices. We're all coming up with innovations. Let's find a way to further share them, and I think technology is a great way to do so. Thank you.
I think, as Lazaro has said, that it's time for more and more people connect. We use this word in diplomatic parley, that people connect. I think the new mantra can be farmer to farmer connect, and also leveraging technology more and more. Thanks a lot, Lazaro Sandoval. I'll go to Mr. Dalci. Mr. Dalci from Embassy of Brazil in New Delhi. Dalci, Bagolin, your concluding note on the future of working together in terms of policy.
Okay. Before the coronavirus crisis, if you come back to January, the scenario was that we had a scenario that the FAO forecasts for the increase of population is that we would have a scarcity of food in 2050. And also the problems with the increase of depletion of natural resources, the climate change, the increase of CO2 in the atmosphere, and then suddenly these problems seems to be secondary. Now we have a very short-term problem, that is the coronavirus. But in reality, these old problems remains the same, and now they are aggravated with the coronavirus crisis, because now we have a disruption in the movement of people, and it affects also the movement of goods, and as consequence also the movement of food. So it's a challenge to maintain the supply chain working in this scenario, but the old problems remains. So we need to work together to resolve it, and innovation is has a very important role in this area to create alternatives and solutions that help people to overcome these problems. And there are two ways to work on that. We can strengthen the countries can be more closer, or the countries can try to cooperate more and be more open for each other. So I'm sure that innovation has a very important role to solve these problems, and the cooperation will be fundamental to get these results, to find the farmers, and to make the population be beneficial with these results.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dalci from Brazilian Embassy. I'll come to Mark, but before that, I'll come to Dr. Sangita Ladha. Dr. Sangita, I'll request John to stay back for just 5 minutes. We have a special thing just end of this session. We will end up in 5 minutes. So maybe 2.5 minutes from Dr. Sangita and 2.5 minutes from Mr. Mark.
I'm sorry, sir. I do actually have to go. I'm sorry. I have another pressing engagement, but don't evad and come and get.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much. मिलते हैं. धन्यवाद. Okay. So, Dr. Sangita, you're concluding because we're running out of time. Maybe 2.5 minutes for you, and then I'll come to
Yeah.
Mark.
Irrigate the crop, not the land, with smart farming techniques, digital farming for mitigating the risk in agriculture, and by deploying site-specific treatments. And more important is modernization of the canal command area with integrated water resources management and last mile connectivity with micro irrigation. Whether it is a solar pump or it's a canal command area, the entire irrigation network should not remain a mere water distribution, but has to be designed on the principle of integrated water resource management and a shift from traditional supply-based system to demand-based system in case of irrigation, and adoption of smart farming techniques with automation is a way forward. Thank you.
Quite nice, Dr. Sangeeta. Integrated water resource management. That's insightful. Ending note, I must say. I'll come to Mark Jarman. Mark, your concluding remark.
No, first of all,
What do you expect from government?
First of all, thank you for the opportunity to talk on this panel, and really enjoy the insights of my fellow panelists. On my last visit to India with the British High Commission in December, it was very heartening to kind of hear how there's a real focus on cross-government innovation and linked to policy and funding to see, okay, can we come together to tackle these broader challenges? And I think I very much concur with Lazaro's comments and John's comments around, farmer to farmer interaction and, innovation doing things in different ways. And I think that's important to recognize, because we all live and work in different geographies, and food supply chains are global. Different geographies, different farmer base have different needs. And therefore, unless you are going to look at how technology innovation is placed within the local context, it will fundamentally fail. And that's why collaboration is fundamentally key. And if we can do that appropriately, then you start to remove some of the barriers of trust. And that's trust from a cultural perspective, from a relationship perspective, but also from a digital and data perspective. So you start to create that open environment to share that information. And if we can link business, big agri-business, who are very dominant players here across the global supply chains, with finance, and then link that with policy, we create the playground for innovators to really look at supporting the global sector and deliver the business models that look at where value can be shared. And I think my closing remark, and very pertinent for Indian agricultural production, is how do you do that in a way where you benefit the smallholder? And if we don't do that, and we focus on very much a capitalist view, then production will be stifled. And if we're sensible, we look at that, we look at where the value has to be shared, then we can benefit those at the bottom end of production who we all rely on. And that will really, really deliver a change to production moving forward in a post-COVID world.
Yep, Mark. I think what you have said, that removing the barriers of mistrust and bridging the gap more and more, I think it reminds me of a famous quote by a director when he won the Oscars. He said that time has come for us to remove the barrier of subtitles so that we can get exposed to world cinema more. I think it's all about removing the barriers and connecting with people and communities and disruptors more and more to build up a comprehensive agriculture policy in post-COVID era. Thanks a lot, Mr. Lazaro, Mr. Mark, Mr. Dalci, Dr. Sangita, and John, who has just left. He has an urgent meeting. But before we end this session, I'd just like to inform all of you and our viewers that we are called Elets Technomedia. We are a technology and media research organization. We are publishing 4 magazines: eGov, which is India's first magazine on e-governance; eHealth, which was again India's first magazine on innovation for the health sector; digital learning, which talks about innovation in education sector, both school, higher, technical and skill education; and the Banking and Finance Post magazine, which talks about innovation in banking and finance sector. All these magazines are niche magazines, were in print for last 17, 16, 15 years. And we just want to launch the digital issue of 200th issue of eGov magazine, which is India's and Asia's first magazine on e-governance. We are celebrating the landmark 200th issue, which is being printed for last 17 years uninterrupted. And we if I can ask my colleague Mr. Prabhakar to play the video, the digital launch of eGov's 200th issue. Thank you all. That was the 200th issue of eGov magazine. You can log into egov.eletsonline.com. And again, all our happening of this event has been broadcasted live in Facebook and YouTube channels through eGov magazine handle. I see people are commenting and everything. So it's interactive, and I think if some questions comes to us, we can share those with you, and we can reply to that. And we'll be also documenting the entire session brief, and we'll be making an event report. We'll be circulating it to all the stakeholders, including you. Thanks a lot, Mr. Lazaro Sandoval, Mr. Mark Jarman, Dalci and Dr. Sangita Ladha for joining us today in a wonderful panel discussion on how to move forward with global collaborations, keeping in mind technology, AgroTech, agro-innovation, supply chain management policies for the growth of farm sector in future in post-COVID era. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With this, thank you so much.
Bye, Mr.
With this,